and you've scored a touchdown, and the guy who's trying to stop you doesn't stop you, and he's at your feet, and you look down and you go, nah, 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 nah. And you make fun of him, and the referee throws a yellow penalty flag. I mean, in sports, we are supposed to be good sports. We don't taunt in sports. We don't make fun of people. But Paul has absolutely no problem in this passage taunting death. He's talking about resurrection. He's talking about the victory over death. And after he lays it out, it's like he talks to death personally. Where, O death, where's your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? Sha-na-na-na, sha-na-na-na, tell him goodbye. Yes, there is some sting to death. I don't want to pretend that there's not some sting. It hurts to lose people. I was sad for weeks after what happened in Las Vegas, and I didn't know any of those people. It hurt me as it hurt you to think about a bicycle path in New York City this last week. Even closer to home, perhaps some of you have lost a parent recently, or, you know, sometimes when things get out of order, we even bury our own children. So I know that death still does have a little sting to it. But it's not like a yellow jacket sting, those kind that hurt for days and days and days. It's not the same. Paul talks about elsewhere a slight momentary affliction. Death is conquered. This 15th chapter of 1 Corinthians is an incomparable chapter. There's nothing like it in the whole Bible. Part of me was tempted, and maybe if I had got more preaching opportunities, I would have just done this. Part of me was tempted to just read to you 1 Corinthians 15, the whole chapter, and pronounce the benediction. You probably would have gotten more out of the service just hearing the entire chapter. It's all about death and resurrection. We get a little bit of that in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and, you know, in the Easter story. And there's some beautiful poetry, poetic imagery about resurrection in the book of Revelation. Paul has some things kind of sprinkled around here and there, but he's gathered it all together in what the Bible scholar Gordon Fee calls the theological treasure of the church, 1 Corinthians 15. And so the church has set aside every year the first Sunday in November, this day, as All Saints Sunday. Perhaps you have been in churches that celebrated that. Anybody in here been in a church that's had All Saints? I see some of you shaking your heads. And maybe you've done it here from time to time. The church has been celebrating All Saints Sunday for 1,000 years. All Saints Day is November the 1st. All Saints Sunday is the first Sunday after that. And on this day, we remember and claim and celebrate all of those in the church who have died and gone before us. It's just the most special Sunday of the year. I really could hardly believe the grace that was given me to come and preach on this Sunday. It is one of the most triumphant and victorious Sundays in the year. And in many churches, what will be done on All Saints Sunday is that the pastor or the lay leader will come and at some point in the service read the names of everybody in that church who has died over the past 12 months. And we will remember, we'll give thanks to God, and we'll proclaim the resurrection. What we've said in the affirmation of faith every week, one of the phrases is, I believe in the communion of the saints. And what that means is they're still with us. They're all around us. This was John Wesley's favorite Sunday of all. He said it takes you all the way back to Abraham and Isaac and Sarah, all of those who are our ancestors in the faith. We stop to think about them. And I'll add John and Charles Wesley to that list today. And maybe we should throw in even Martin Luther. It is just this time when the church victoriously remembers we're not alone. I don't know whether they still do this at Notre Dame or not, but some years ago they had this incredibly beautiful tradition at the start of football season. When new freshmen would come, they would issue the freshmen all of the things that they gave every freshman. You know, here's your helmet, here's your pads, you know, here's your tennis shoes, here's your locker, on and on and on. But in addition, they would give them a little 3x5 card. And on that 3x5 card, it had the name of every player in Notre Dame who had ever previously worn their number. Now, I think that's really special. It reminds those young freshmen they're not the first person who ever wore that number. Somebody else named Joe Theismann or Bronco Nagurski or, Newt Rockne or somebody else wore that number before they did. And those people are still swirling around that stadium in some form of memory. Who is it that once sat in your pew? Who is it that once lighted candles or prepared communion here or tended to the cemetery? We are surrounded. Those people aren't gone. They're part of your DNA and a part of my DNA. And as I was driving from Macon up here today, I'm thinking about the pastors who are on the other side of the Jordan River, who were my mentors and who influenced me. I'm thinking about my parents and my grandparents, all of whom have long been gone. Death remains a mystery. And I get a little bit suspicious sometimes, even of preachers who try to explain it too much. Even Paul, in this great 15th chapter of 1 Corinthians, he can't quite explain it all. He says, listen, I'm going to tell you a mystery. And I think the only people who think they really have it all together are those ones who write these bestsellers that say, I was dead and I went to heaven and then I came back. And I'm a little suspicious of some of those books. My dad understood the mystery of it. He was a World War II veteran and he lived into his 90s. He talked about death as in terms of what it would be like when he went on that last great patrol. Wondering what, he said, would it be like beyond the stars. Paul doesn't explain everything, but he says the perishable must put on imperishability. This mortal body must put on immortality. And that death will be swallowed up in victory. As Charles Wesley wrote it in one of his hymns, we will be changed from glory into glory. You know that hymn? Love divine, all loves excelling. Always love that hymn. Changed from glory into glory, till in heaven we see his face, till we cast our crowns before him, lost in wonder, love, and grace. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, this is going to happen in the twinkling of an eye, in a fraction of a second, at the sounding of the last trumpet. I was working in the woods in my yard yesterday afternoon, and I heard a saxophone somewhere. Just kind of, the sound just kind of coming through the woods. I thought, wow, I'm preaching on the last trumpet tomorrow. And a twinkling of an eye. You know, there's going to come a time, and none of us knows when it is for us, whether we die before Christ comes back or not. But when it happens, it's going to be just like that. And we'll be changed in a second, Paul says. It will be kind of what I call a resurrection big bang. Everything, every synapse in my body, every nerve in your body, every organ, every muscle, every neuron will be changed. And Paul makes it clear we're going to be a resurrection body. Now, you think about what that means for a while. I'm not sure. But what it does mean is I'm not just kind of some little Casper the Friendly Ghost floating around somewhere. He said it's like when you put a seed into the ground, the seed dies, and then it comes to life again in a different form. 1 Corinthians 15. This is what we proclaim, and this is what we live daily. And we really do proclaim this for instance, maybe you don't even think about the words in this communion ritual, that we're going to have communion in a minute, but there's a point in the ritual, you're getting ready, you will be saying, Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. But when we say that, before you say those words, the preacher says, we join their unending hymn. Who is they? The ones that are around us, all around us, who have died and been transformed and are with God now and also with us. We are joining, we're just kind of, the communion ritual says we're jumping in on the hymn that they're singing all the time. And we're just going to kind of ease our way in to Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ shall come again. We're easing in with them. Oh, death, where is your victory? I will confess to some ignorance. Well, I won't confess to all of it. I'll confess to some right this second. I had not really realized until I drove into town today and saw a sign that said tours. I thought, oh, yeah, I'm in zombie country. Are any of you zombies? I stopped on Main Street. I've never been in Harrelson before. I thought I got here a little bit early. I'm going to just drive down Main Street and didn't know what was on Main Street. Well, there's nothing but deserted buildings. And I got out and I thought, I want to take a picture of one of these buildings. It's kind of pretty in a rustic kind of a way. And then I see a guy walking down toward me with a coffee cup in his hand. And I realized he kind of wanted to talk to me. And he wanted me to know that I could be on the street, but that the property on either side of the street was really private property. I guess that's where some of the movies have been filmed and stuff. We had a wonderful conversation. I assured him I was a Methodist preacher and I wasn't going to tear anything up or steal anything anyway. His name is Jose Sanchez. He doesn't go to church. I asked him. His mama is on oxygen. I told him about you. He said he works at that tour. He works over at the tour place over there. He said, 2 or 3 weeks from now, I'm going to get off on a Sunday. He said, I hope to come here. But here's the part I meant to get to. He's been a zombie in these movies. I said, be a zombie for me. I want to take a picture of you. He made a horrible face. And I got his photo. You can believe in zombies or not, but in the Christian tradition, I'm not worried about zombies. Oh, death, where is your victory? Oh, death, where is your sting? You and I, in the face of opioids, can be victorious. You and I, in the face of mass shootings, in the face of all of the, what do I call it, the dis-ease in our country right now, you and I can live victoriously. Oh, death, where is your victory? Some years ago, and I'll finish with this, my wife Bonnie and I were on vacation in Chicago. We were on a Sunday at the John Hancock Tower, which when we were there, it was the second tallest building in the world. It's now the 4th tallest building in Chicago. 3 buildings taller in Chicago than the John Hancock Tower. But back then, we went up to the top of that tower, about 96 stories high where we were. You could see Lake Michigan, you could see Wisconsin, you could see Indiana, the promised land where I am from. You could look all the way down, and 96 stories below you was the 4th Avenue Presbyterian Church, right across the street from the John Hancock Tower. I felt a little bit sorry for the church. The shadow of that building covered it. We went down the elevator. It was a Sunday morning. We walked across the street. It was 11 o'clock. We went to church in that building. And I realized when I walked into that Gothic limestone building with its beautiful steeple, and I walked into that building where stained glass windows were and a beautiful wooden pulpit and people singing the songs of faith, that maybe I could see Wisconsin from the top of the John Hancock Tower, but in that church, I could see eternity. And I'll take eternity over Wisconsin or even Indiana anytime. When we gather here in this church before the Lord's Supper, gathered with a communion of saints all around us, we are tasting eternity. Let us live our lives victoriously. In the twinkling of an eye, we shall all be changed. Amen. If you will